Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. This is Moyna Bass Fishers. I am Jim Moyna, professional bass fisherman. In this video, we are going to discuss my last 2 days of fun fishing at Gull Lake in near Brainerd, Minnesota. So here we are in mid-September with super mild weather, really nice weather. The overnight lows are not getting that low for this time of year. The highs are probably a little bit higher than normal, and it's just been just super nice weather. And let me just tell you, September is my favorite month of the year here in north central Minnesota for a couple of reasons. First of all, the fishing's usually really good. Whether you're fishing muskies, whether you're fishing bass or walleye, I don't know. It just seems like the fishing's good. You get a good fight out of the fish still because our water temperatures are still fairly warm, meaning like I think we're still in the low 70s here. I didn't even look at my temperature gauge the last 2 days, but it has to be like around 71, somewhere in there yet. So you still get that hard fighting fish, because as you may know, if you fished in the months of if you fish late October, through into November and right up to ice up here, you know how sluggish the fish start fighting when when that water temperature gets cold, like below 55 and into 50. They just get to be sluggish fighters and not quite so energetic. So we still got the good fight out of the fish. We're still catching lots of numbers of fish. So I don't know. Plus September, I mean, a lot of the bugs have died off. There's going to be a few bugs, but mosquitoes are barely anything right now. The black flies, your bitey flies like deer flies and horse flies, they're pretty much died off. Your tick, I hardly ever get any ticks in September. So it's just a great place to fish is north central Minnesota in September. My favorite month for sure. So anyhow, so we're over on Gull Lake, me and a couple of friends, Jeff Ginkle and Greg Johnson. We got out there on Gull Lake, and we weren't out there dawn to dusk. We were getting out there for about 3 to 4 hours each of the last couple days, but enough to see what was happening with the bass out there. And really, the first day, which would have been yesterday, I didn't quite get a clear picture of what was going on. The fish weren't biting as good. I wasn't quite putting it all together. I kind of went to some spots where I caught them in the Champions Tour a couple months ago, and the fish weren't in those spots, so I had to go looking. And those spots were like deep coontail type spots. So it had me wondering, well, are the fish moving up? Are they moving back shallower? And the fish we did catch yesterday kind of ranged from the deep coontail edge up to, which is literally like 20 feet, up into like the 10-foot range. We caught some up there. So I really didn't have a clear picture of it, but that all changed today because we got onto a really good deep coontail edge bite. We found the right place, and there were a lot of them piled into this one stretch, and we didn't have to move the boat much at all to just keep catching them. And it was like 20 foot of water, of deep, green as can be, coontail, catching them on, I like to use a heavy jig, so I was using the heaviest all-terrain AT jig that they make. I was putting a Billy Rub's flutter craw on there, which I'm absolutely have fallen in love with over the last couple years. In fact, the first fish I ever caught on a Billy Rub's flutter craw used as a jig trailer was a couple years ago, but it was like a 9-pounder down on Sam Rayburn. And boy, that's just such a great jig trailer. For whatever reason, they just bite it. So that was a great presentation out there on that deep coontail. Then also we had a finesse drop shot rig. So we put like a small worm on there with spinning line, 8-pound test. So that was catching a lot of fish. I also threw a Nico rig a little bit, and I can honestly say I don't think they like that as much. For whatever reason, they just weren't as keyed on that. I don't know if that heavier jig falling faster was a key, because with the Nico rig, I had a weight inserted into the worm that it was a 16th ounce weight, and it made the bait, or no, 3/32 out weight, 3/32 ounce weight, and it kind of made the bait kind of fall slower. I did catch some on it, but it seemed like the other two presentations were better. It's like they wanted that bait close to the bottom. They didn't want to have to swim up for it. They just wanted it near the bottom or on the bottom. And that jig, the jig really was the best bait, because it caught the biggest. First of all, it did catch the biggest fish. And I'm not just saying one biggest fish. The overall size of the jig fish was quite a bit better than the finesse rig. So that's important. I mean, that's, if you're looking for the bigger bites, the jig bite was the bigger bite. So so that's kind of what's going on in Gull Lake. And Gull Lake has some really clear water. That's why you got 20 feet weed lines. We had a little hazy. We had some hazy cloud cover, and then just some mild cloud cover today, which made the fish, I think the fish were biting a little better than yesterday. We also caught a few fish before we got on that deep coontail bite. We fished. I was just kind of moving in and out a little bit, throwing a variety of baits. And my buddy was throwing a spinner bait. He caught one on that. I was playing around with some walking baits on the surface, and I actually caught probably like 4 or 5 on that. But these were like 1.5-pound fish or so, maybe 2 pounds. But man, when we got to that deep coon edge in that one place in particular, these were some of the nicest fish. I mean, these are nice, really nice, chunky Gull Lake largemouth bass. And then we didn't just catch them on that spot, but then we had another spot where I picked out on the map, went over there, and probably caught like 3 or 4 over there before I had to go in for dinner. So that's kind of the report. These fish, I don't know, fishing for largemouths late as you go later and later into the season. I know a lot of them can move up into the shallower water, but they hadn't done that yet. And the thing that really striking me as weird is how 2 months ago in the Champions Tour tournament out there, I caught a ton of fish, placed okay in the turn, 15th out of, I think it was 15th, something like 13th, 14th, 15th out of the 65 boats. So I was catching a fair number of them, and I was catching them out of the deep coontail. But that deep coontail did not work the last 2 days. That location was not right. That was, they just weren't set up there. And where we did find them was a place I did fish 2 months ago that only had small fish, like 1 pound to 1.25 pound fish. But now that spot, which was, I don't know, I'd say it was more of a point kind of a spot, and they just had attracted some of the nicest bass that are around. So it was a fun last couple of days of fishing out there, and it was interesting to see how the lake changed over the last 2 months. But still, the primary pattern, especially if you're going to be, trying to catch a 5, the biggest 5-fish limit, it seems like that deep coontail. And seriously, we only fished like 3 hours 3 to 4 hours yesterday. Same thing today. So if a guy went out there and really bounced around and hit it all day, you're gonna, maybe find not just one honey hole, but a couple, 3, 4 honey holes where these fish are grouped up, and they were grouped up, especially in that one area. I mean, and you can always tell because I'll pitch my jig out there, and one will knock it. I'll set the hook, and I may catch that one, or I may not, but the one will knock it, and I'll throw it back in there, and one might knock it again, and I set the hook and nothing, and then throw it in there again, and then eventually one actually eats it, and I reel them in, unhook it, throw it back out there, one knocks it again, and then here's what happened twice out there was I'd catch one, and my trailer would come off, but because I got that school fired up, so I'm like, so I just pitched the all-terrain AT jig out there without a trailer, just throw that out there with just a skirt, and the fish would be knocking it again. But and I'll do that with a football jig too. Like when I was on the fishing Tennessee River reservoirs, man, if I got into a school of them, my trailer got ripped off or something, instead of sitting down and putting a new trailer on it, I would just fire just the jig out there without a trailer, and I'd always catch some hot fish out of that school while they were still fired up. But and same thing to today. My Billy Rub flutter craw would come off of there, but I just throw just a skirted jig out there by just plain, and fish would be just blasting it. But the funny thing was, I mean, literally probably like 6 or 7 times. It happened on 2 different little schools of fish. And each time I'd throw in there like 4 or 5 times and have a fish just knock the crap out of that jig. But I never hooked up with one. So for whatever reason, they just would knock that thing. And but with the craw trailer on there, much better chance of them actually eating it. So that was kind of an interesting observation. And the other thing is, yeah, that Nico rig, it would catch a couple of fish. If I caught a couple on a jig and then made a couple more flips, pitches out into the deep coontail and didn't get nothing, then I might pick up the Nico rig and then catch one. But then I couldn't catch any more. Then you pick the jig up again, and then or the finesse worm drop shot. I mean, that was always good for mopping up fish. But that, I don't know, the Nico rig's a finesse rig, and it just seemed like it was underperforming compared to the other 2 options, which was interesting to me. So, but anyhow, that's kind of my report. So what I learned today was what I just told you, that basically the fish are still out deep right now. So at least a lot of them are, and a lot of good quality fish are out deep. So that's something I learned, and I've learned, the value, and just one thing that was really highlighted was the value of the jig bite. I've won so much money back early on in my career for just throwing nothing but jigs, and whether it was a flipping jig or a football jig, that you tend to get the big bites. The bigger fish will grab that thing, especially up here in Minnesota, I know for sure. And it was really noticeable over the last couple of days. So anyhow, that's my report. Thanks for watching the channel, and we'll see you next time. Over and out.